call the member from Maitland. You're unusually quiet.
Thank you, Mr Acting Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Independent Commission Against Corruption Amendment Bill 2015. All members of this House are aware of the terrible scourge of corruption and its impacts on our state government and also our communities, but perhaps no one more so than those of us who are in the Hunter who were so deeply affected by this in the last term of this government. In that last term, ICAC hearings became a daily event in the Hunter as layer upon layer, like an onion, was unveiled, unwrapped and showed even more of such terrible behaviour that none of us could quite believe it. We waited daily to hear which of the new elected members would resign after allegations of brown paper bags and other forms of corruption were broadcast. For someone like me, who had always been proud as a former government official with the Commonwealth Government back in the 1990s, I was appalled. I couldn't believe that this kind of behaviour would be acceptable and that people would seek the office which we hold with such honour and privilege and want to take more for themselves on a personal level. I've travelled the world as a travel agent in countries where corruption, baksheesh, other kinds of favours are par for the course, and I'd always believed that this hadn't touched our community or impacted us. I believe, and I've always said, that corruption starts with a single cup of coffee, that when you are offered a gift from someone, you must be clear on why they are giving it to you. And if you feel that there may or will be or could be a sense of obligation to that person in the future, that you should not accept anything from that person. I think it's also important to be clear on who we represent in this place. We represent our communities. We don't represent sectional interests. It's very hard at times to make these things clear because we all have different groups, different organisations, different businesses, backgrounds, etc., that have informed the way that we come into this place. But we must always remember that when we walk through those doors, we come in here solely as the representative of our community, solely to work for the benefit of our state and to ensure that the good of our whole community is put above the good of any one other organisation that we may have some association with. I'm proud to be a member of the New South Wales Parliament, and for me it is such a sad and disgraceful thing that there are people who have been in this place who haven't taken that commitment seriously. And I think, and in supporting this bill, it's also important for all of us to take those messages of what the bill is trying to achieve to heart and to ensure that we don't place ourselves in those positions. Mr Acting Speaker, I'd also like to talk about the importance of being clear in what you say to the community, because another thing that has been part of this is when we saw the events that happened in the Hunter and the way that they were dealt with by the sitting members who then left their parties, and some of them left government and there were by-elections. I think we saw that there were promises made about the action that would be taken that wasn't acted upon, that there would be apologies made and that people would feel that there had been clarity. I'm concerned about what's happening with our rail line in Newcastle, and I believe that that is something where we need to ensure that the government is acting clearly on that issue. And I can say, hand on my heart, that I'm there for my community on that. I also want to make sure that when we talk about our election campaigns, we're also talking about honesty. My dear friend and the member for Strathfield has been right through the ICAC process, and part of that experience for her showed the damage that has been done to her in her life and in her political career at that time, in being acted against by people who had other agendas. And that's really important to ensure that that kind of behaviour doesn't happen, that it's not acceptable. When I've been around the world, I've been lucky enough to see other elections at times being held in other countries and seen the way that those are conducted, where people have to have their hands dyed before they vote or when they vote to ensure that they have one vote only in that act, or even to see that people with low levels of literacy can use symbols on ballot papers so that they are able to fully participate in the democratic process. I believe that the universal ballot in our community means that we get a fairer electoral system, and that's really important. and that goes then again to safeguarding to some level against corruption, because it makes it harder for people to buy votes. I think that it's also important to take some of these steps into our federal sphere and look at the way that the federal government is governed in this area, to make sure that the rigour that is being applied to us in terms of donation caps and in term for the numbers and the amounts that donors can provide to our campaigns is taken into the federal sphere, because I think that at the moment it is too easy for people to donate to different levels of parties and to still seek to influence the political debate in our country. I have no issue with unions, as my friends have said over there, and that is because we know that unions are there for the workers, for the people and men and women in our country who actually do the work, who try to help each other and to help our general community. And I think that the unions have done a wonderful job in advocating on behalf of our community at different times. And yeah, that's basically all I want to say, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say thank you for the bill. We should commend it, and it's always good to see that the government is going to be prepared to look for corruption, to look for better ways to fight it, and to ensure that those who are corrupt are able to be brought to account. And I'm glad to see that the opposition, again, with the same commitment to integrity and honesty in politics, are supporting the bill, and I commend it to the House. Thank you.
Questions of this bill?